Hello, and welcome to the Millennial Nutritionist Podcast. I'm Isla Garcia, master's degree of nutrition science and registered dietitian, and I'm going to make weight loss realistic, sustainable, and uncomplicated for your busy lifestyle. On this podcast, me and my team of registered dietitians will decipher the latest nutrition research, dissect fad diets, and discuss social media trends for you so you can feel confident knowing what to eat to achieve your health goals. Research suggests that most weight loss programs aren't successful, but my experience has taught me that this is not because the participants aren't committed. It's because those diets are designed by non-nutrition professionals and center around severe restrictions. We are here to provide the facts about the science of weight loss so you can have the success you want and continue living your best life. Hello, this week's episode is another replay episode, and I talked in our first episode of the month that I was going to do an episode about emotional eating, which I think I will replug at some point because I think it's such a good episode with a therapist. But today it was just like more so on my heart to repost the episode that I recorded with my good friend Jylen, who's been on the podcast multiple times. She's also a therapist, and she directly talks about increase in confidence. So I don't really know why I didn't plan to repost it at the beginning, like in my whole plan for this month, but it's okay. I just feel like this is an episode a lot of people need to hear about. Feel like I have a lot of clients right now that are struggling with confidence. And I think this more so comes into play when you're at a lower body weight and it's just really hard to lose the weight compared to when you're at a higher body weight. But it can still happen when you're at a high body weight too. Research that suggests that people who have a higher confidence level when they are at their current body weight tend to have better weight loss results overall. I don't know the scientific reason why, but I will just say that we notice in our practice, if you are able to be consistent without the scale dictating, like, hey, I lost weight this week, it means I'm going to keep it up. But if you're just like, regardless, like, I'm confident in who I am, I'm choosing to improve my health and eat healthier and be more active for reasons beyond weight loss, even though weight loss is one of them, we find that clients are more consistent with it because they're trying to do the things we tell them because it's like a core value. It's not like, well, when I lose weight, that's when I'm going to keep doing it. Like we kind of need to get beyond that because there are weeks where you're not going to lose weight. But anyway, I hope that you get a lot out of this episode. I definitely have learned so much from this episode for myself that I make sure to always think about improving my confidence in all ways. So another thing is just like, if you feel like you're upset about your weight loss or your weight journey or your health journey right now, maybe ask yourself too, like, how do you feel in other areas of your life? Because one big thing I learned from this episode is that if we already feel bad about ourselves in one other area that's not related to weight loss in our lives, like work or relationship or hair, I don't know, something like that, we're also likely not going to feel good about our weight. So maybe evaluate your overall confidence, not just your confidence in your body. Welcome back to the Millennial Nutritionist Podcast. Isla is here, your founder, CEO, and host of our podcast. And today I'm going to talk about confidence. So almost every client that I work with says that they want to feel better in the sense of being okay with taking pictures, trying on clothes, and even going out on dates. But when I ask them if this means they want to increase confidence, they normally say yes. So what is interesting is that I find that clients actually increase their confidence with the actions they take instead of just the number on the scale, like knowing that they are taking control over their health or that they are eating more produce or that they have more energy and that they're in control of that now. They seem to feel better about themselves knowing that they're taking control of their health, actually just feeling more energized, less bloating, and know how to eat in every situation. I didn't realize there was a connection before counseling people through weight loss. And I even found that some research suggests that weight loss may not always be correlated to increased body image. So we need to learn how to increase our body image or improve it outside of just the scale. So Jylen, who is a friend and a licensed professional counselor, is going to help us with that. So thank you so much for joining us today, Jylen.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah. So Jylen was on another episode 32. So you can go listen to that if you kind of want to know the lowdown on her. But let's just hop in. So I always like to ask our guests kind of like what meals, foods, or any like things you're enjoying recently that's kind of like wellnessy that people can be inspired by. Do you have anything in the moment or even just like foods you're liking at the moment?
Yeah, so I think recently, like I've started sauteing like spinach and peppers, just trying anything to get my kids into vegetables. And it's freaking delicious. Like I just typically roast my stuff in the oven, but sauteing them has just added like, I don't know, lots of flavor. So we just that and let's see, like sushi. I've always been to sushi, but more now.
Yeah, now that you can have it and you're not pregnant.
Yeah,
Right.
right, right. All the raw things, give them to me.
Do you put any seasonings in the spinach that's good? I always, like, struggle with sautéed spinach because it gets, like, kind of a weird consistency, and sometimes I gross myself out.
Right, yes, this is true. So, like, we actually like the seasoning brand called Kinder's. We discovered it, I think, like, on Amazon, and it's called, like, I think Master Salt, and we just sprinkle it on the spinach and add some butter because 'cause we're in the South, and it's freaking delicious. Like, now that you say it gets soggy, I'm, like, overthinking
Oh,
the soggy.
no.
But it's good that
No.
way, you should try it.
Okay, okay, and do you just use, like, bell peppers or what kind of
We use
peppers?
bell peppers, yeah, either, like, the big bell peppers or the, like, little mini bell peppers. We love
Mm,
it. Yeah.
okay, good to know, and your kids like it?
Oh my gosh, yeah, Ava, like, they're really into, like, eating the rainbow. Ava doesn't really understand that, but Chase, who is 4, is like, "Oh my gosh, like, I get to eat colors," and I'm like, "You can."
Oh my
So
gosh, I love
yeah,
that.
yeah, they love it.
Oh, cute. Well, mine is I've, like, recently become obsessed with this dark chocolate bark from Trader Joe's. It's,
Oh
like,
my
not
gosh.
anything that's, like, super, super healthy, but dark chocolate does found out recently dark chocolate has a little bit more fiber than regular chocolate, so I'm like, "Okay, that's a win." At least
Yeah.
it's, like, helping fill me up, help my gut, but it is so good. I love dark chocolate that has, like, any salt, and then this has, like, pretzels and almonds in it, so it has, like, a little bit of a different taste, and I learned this a long time ago in, like, science class that there's something about dark chocolate that helps you to not, like, overeat it. I don't know what it is, something about it. I don't know, maybe it just doesn't taste as, like, good and sweet as regular chocolate, so I find that I don't, like, overeat on it, like, I really feel fine with, like, 1 piece
Right,
as opposed to, like, needing, like, a whole bunch of brownies or cheesecake or
right.
something like that, so I guess that's something too that could help.
Oh my gosh, almonds, dark chocolate, that sounds like kryptonite. But yeah, I can see why dark
Yeah.
chocolate would be like we wouldn't overindulge in it because I think it's just so rich.
Yeah,
Whereas
exactly.
milk chocolate, you're just like,
Yeah.
"Give it all to me, I'll eat it all."
Yeah, so if you're Trader Joe's looking for it, looking for something, that's my recommendation of the week.
They always
But
have some good stuff.
yeah, so for the article that I picked for us today, I'm excited because I wanted to have a therapist to kind of go over this. It's a trend on TikTok from a while back, and it's all about the almond mom. So if you're not on TikTok, you might not really know what it is. And so one of the articles here, let me find it, had like an exact description of kind of what it is. Okay. An almond mom is overbearing about what the daughter eats. Bender explains she's obsessed with food and diet culture. In one video, Bender posing as an almond mom asks her child if she is really hungry or just bored. In another, sets out Halloween candy and then slaps away, hand grabbing for some. So this was kind of a trend on TikTok a while back. And so these two articles, Teen Vogue and then Newsweek, cover it. And I didn't realize that it kind of came from Yolanda Hadid. So if anybody watched like the original Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, this was like all filmed, which I watched it, but I guess I didn't really think much of it because it was like just that time, like Gigi is her daughter. I don't know. It just kind of seemed normal. And then people are pointing out that it was probably really problematic. And now I'm like, yeah, I guess it was, but it's weird that you don't realize it when you're looking at it. But what were your thoughts overall about like this concept or these articles or anything like that?
Yeah, oh my gosh, so I thought like, holy crap, like, this is horrible to think that, a society as a whole, like, I think about girls and women in general, we're sort of like when you think about it, we're socialized to be perfect, to have the perfect hair, to have, like, a body that needs to look a certain way, and it made me think about how much, like, this is related to, like, self-esteem and body image and our perception of ourselves, which essentially is what body image is, right? It's not like the our body in its aesthetics way or self, like it's like our perception of ourselves.
Mhm.
And to hear and read about and watch the video, I like it made me think about like all the influences that we have that influence our perception, like everything from like our family, from when we're itty bitty, right, to like social media, literally everything that's thrown at us that can just sort of like distort the way that we think about our bodies and our place in the world. So that was my thought, and I also thought like goodness gracious, I hope people are out here eating more than almonds because of course, like, you're not gonna function. It's like yeah, it's really I mean, I was sad and in
Yeah.
shock. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really sad. I feel like the one thing I don't know, I mean, it's definitely hard to understand, like, how our like our mom generation grew up. I don't think that my mom was an almond mom. Like, if anything, my mom was always worried that I wasn't eating enough because I was so active. I was a runner, and I would always be, sometimes it was like the cool thing in school to like skip breakfast. So like, I'm
Mhm.
not eating breakfast today. And she'd be like, you are eating breakfast. You're gonna have this,
Right.
this, this, this. But then
Right.
sometimes it was just like that time where all of that kind of like diet food was coming out. She was one to put, my brother and I always used to joke that she would give us like chocolate covered fiber one bars for dessert. Because like which is not great for school when you're like stuck in the classroom. But I don't think she was trying to make us lose weight. I think she would just learned about fiber and was like, "This is gonna be great." And
Right.
so that's why those videos kinda made me laugh. But then I read more into it. I was like, "Oh, yeah, I definitely didn't think like, I didn't have, like, this dark part of it where she was like, 'Don't eat it.'" But if other people did, like, how can they kind of overcome these thought processes around food, that maybe come from their parents?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So you said something really like important too, that like oftentimes we think about our parents and the way that they talk about food and its relation to our body, and like sometimes our parents might have made comments or might have I don't know, like given us like I remember my mom like was all into like the Atkins stuff when it first came out, like this is your dessert kind of thing because it's
Mhm.
chocolate. Like I think that our parents sometimes like consciously aren't aware of the deep rooted like messages and
Mm.
perceptions that they hold about like food in our bodies. But I think in terms of to people who do have or do have almond moms or were raised by an almond parent, I think um in order to overcome like those thought processes, I think working with a clinician who's trained in evidence-based practices such as like cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, dialectical DBT. Oh my gosh, I'm like so embarrassed. Dialectical behavioral therapy and mindfulness, along with like a lot of interpersonal work in order to like identify those thoughts, have awareness of those thoughts, challenge and replace that internal monologue that like is repeatedly playing in our heads. So that's what I would always encourage is working with someone.
And so then, like, what would the outcome be, or what does it look like to work through that, or what is, like, on the other side of that if you did work through that with somebody?
Right, right. So I think on the other side would be hopefully like a gained level of awareness, because I think oftentimes like so much is thrown at us, whether it's like in social media, like on TV, our friends, our family is making comments about food and our bodies, that we don't really like, we're not really truly aware of what we're hearing and internalizing until like, a month later or 2 weeks later, where like our behavior is sort of like
Mm.
activated, and we're behaving in ways that we typically wouldn't just because we um someone mentioned something about like carbs being bad, like oh my
Right.
god, you can't eat carbs, right? Like so I think like awareness is like the first step, and it seems so simple, but so many of us don't have that. We can't recognize, oh my gosh, like this is a really maladaptive or unhelpful
Mm.
thought about food, and like
Mhm.
we are like punishing our bodies, I guess, by not fueling our body because like
Mhm.
this food is bad, or I can't have this because of something that was said or something that I saw on TV, or this diet that this like model or whoever is doing. But so that would be a step, and that's the work that we would see in therapy is the awareness, and then later doing like the CBT, identifying the thoughts, maladaptive thoughts, replacing those thoughts with like positive or more helpful behaviors or thoughts. And then I really like acceptance and commitment therapy because in it we sort of acceptance and commitment therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy, like we talk about like just radical acceptance of like, okay, this is where I am in the world, this is who I am, I don't need to really change because of like external pressures,
Mhm.
like this is intrinsic, like this is coming from within to become the best version of myself. So that's what the road would look like, and I don't know if that makes sense. It makes sense in my clinical mind because I'm how my brain works, but does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it kinda makes sense. I mean, you have been cheering me on as I've been, like, finally going through therapy for the last, like, couple months, and so, like, yeah, like like, a lot of the things we talk about are, like I'm like, "I just don't like I'm having this thought process." She's like, "Well, you're gonna have those thought processes. Let's accept it, but, like, let's figure out kinda, like, how to move on." Because I thought going to therapy, I'd be like, "Okay, I'm gonna fix this." She's like, "We're not gonna fix
Sure.
it." Yeah, she's like, "We're gonna process through it, and we're gonna, like, kind of accept it." And at first, I was like, "Well, that sucks." Like, I just want it to be gone. But now I understand that it's like yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that also reminds me of a client I had recently. I think it was this past week, and she was trying to ask me, like, what the best dessert was, like, which protein bar was the best dessert. And, like, sure, we can use protein bars as dessert, but I was like, "You can also just have a dessert." Like, it doesn't have to be, like, this protein thing, but that she, like, never even thought about that, like, "Oh, I can just, like, have a dessert." And so it kinda reminds me of what you're saying about, like, maybe all these these things that she was even seeing online always like, every single food has to have, like, a specific purpose, and a lot of times when I tell clients, like, sometimes food can just be food, it doesn't have to be, like, another thing, like, it can be just, like, chocolate that's not even dark, and so I feel like that's kinda what you're saying too, is that right? Like, not even
Yeah.
knowing you had those thoughts?
Right, not even having the conscious awareness that we have these thoughts. And you mentioned, like, in hearing you talk about this client, I thought about, oh, sort of like giving ourselves permission, right? Just as you do with your clients, which I think is amazing just watching your program. Like, it's not one that feels like it's like marketed toward like, you have to be like this size, right? In order to be like your best self. Like, you're definitely encouraging people to improve their relationship with food and give themselves permission to like eat the things that they want to eat, while providing the education, which is like it all
Mhm.
comes down to basics. So yes.
Yeah, I love it. And the last question I had about this topic was like, how do we avoid becoming almond moms? Because I don't know if like maybe like if you grew up in this, like how are our moms know that it's even bad? Like, what if we're doing something now that we don't realize is bad, right? Like, how do we even know that?
Right. Absolutely. And I think the answer to that is like it depends and I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. But it like really I think like it's so interesting. I really enjoy working with women in the perinatal and postpartum period because in having children of our own, oftentimes things come out in our mothering that we maybe weren't conscious of throughout like our like pre-babies. And so I think again, awareness, and also like self-compassion, right? Because like the things that you know about food, right? Like are things that you were taught. And how are you supposed to know any different than what you
Right.
were taught and what you heard? So I think really shifting the perspective, and this, I mean, this is going to take work because it's like an uphill, it feels like an uphill battle when you've spent 25, 30, 35, 40 years of your life sort of having your brain wired in a specific way to look at food in a particular way in your body and self-esteem, but like doing the work to shift that thought, shift that mindset, and talking to ourselves and our littles about how incredible our bodies can be and what they do for us. So I don't know if that answers your question. I think I got my soapbox, but basically like viewing food as fuel for our
Mhm.
bodies that are powerful and amazing, and they help us dance and move and like function. But I think going back, like it really does start with awareness. So I think a
Mhm.
lot of people, like in our 20s and 30s, we sort of start to hit like a wall, and in terms of like either progress or our self-esteem, and it all comes back to like, okay, what's really going on in here,
Mhm.
and what needs to shift, what do I need to welcome, what do I need to change? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. I used to get, like, caught up in this. I'm not a parent, but definitely thinking about it, and I always, like, get caught up when I talk to my husband about, like, should we go to like, should we put ourselves in this house to send them to this school? Or, like, what if they grow up like this? What do we need to grow up like this? And I don't know how he's so wise on some of these answers. He's like, "I think it more so matters how we act, like, and then they model it, like, not, like, what we do or, like, what school we put them in or what sport we have them play." And so I feel like that's what I'm kinda getting from what you're saying, like, how we kind of think about ourselves and how we also, like, talk about food to ourselves is what our kids learn. Is
Yeah,
that what you're saying?
yeah, and how we talk about our bodies in front of our children and to ourselves. Like I oftentimes I heard something recently about how like, affirmations are incredibly helpful. And oftentimes like when we have a thought of like I X, it's oftentimes negative. Like let's
Mhm.
say like you slip up at work or like, I don't know, like you do something really like socially awkward in public, then you're like thinking like I'm so this, I'm so that. So like affirmations about our bodies or talking about our bodies, like, oh my gosh, like I'll say to my son, like, oh my gosh, like your body's so strong and you're so fast. And like you like your food helps fill your belly and that gives you fuel and you're gonna be the fastest. And he's like, yeah, I'm so strong. Like
Aw.
really like enhancing like the like talking about our bodies and our children's bodies in a positive way, but not objectifying them. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
so. Instead of saying like yeah, and then like a superficial way, like you were talking about, like more functional, like more benefits than just like looking good is what I'm getting from that.
yeah, yes, yeah, yeah.
Do you love our realistic approach on nutrition but want to dive a little bit deeper? Let me tell you about the Millennial Living Membership Program. This was designed to help you stay motivated and inspired no matter what health journey you're on. We develop monthly nutrition and fitness challenges with prizes you can win if you stick with it to help motivate you through every month. To inspire you, we upload weekly recipes with downloadable food lists, monthly food demos, and we can even have a registered dietitian answer your questions on nutrition and weight loss. Our members form a community with other like-minded people to help support each other on their health journey. If you are seeking a way to stay motivated throughout your health journey with our method in mind, try signing up for the Millennial Living Membership Program for the first 2 weeks free by signing up on our website at themillennialnutritionist.com. Let's move on to our actual interview, which feeds into this too. So I really wanted to peg your brain about how we improve our body image because I kind of work on the side of things. I mean, really, as a dietitian, I'm really just trying to make sure somebody's not super hungry, and if they're having cravings, it's not coming from like a protein deficit, something like that. But I do see cool changes in body confidence, but I still don't feel like it's necessarily my area to talk about. So I want to kind of pick your brain about it. So the first question I had for you was, can you just like generally explain like what is positive body image? Or no, why is like positive body image like or having confidence important?
Oh my gosh. So I think like when we think about body image, confidence, and just self-esteem in general, there are many domains to self-esteem. However, I think that it all sort of falls on just like interpersonal relationships and interpersonal effectiveness. So body image is important because it affects everything. Self-esteem, self-confidence is important because it truly does affect everything. If a client comes to you and they're feeling like in the pits because they have this negative perception about their body, right? Like it's going to affect like their work ethic. It's going to affect the way that they talk to themselves, that internal dialogue that they have. It's going to affect their interpersonal relationships, like with friends. It's going to affect their overall mental health, right? Like oftentimes what we see is people with low self-esteem sometimes can present with like other depressive symptoms.
Mhm.
And so I think it's having a positive body image doesn't necessarily mean like having the most perfect body image, right? Like what I strive with my clients and my work is like getting to a place where we're at like a
Mhm.
neutral positive body image, right? Because like perfection is the enemy of good.
Mhm.
And so it's important because like when we feel good, when we feel capable, when we feel powerful, when we feel good, even though I just said that, like we everything else is good,
Yeah.
or our perspective sort of changes to that. Like when we have a negative perspective, when we have zero to no confidence, low self-esteem, poor body image, I think that like it definitely shows in like every aspect of our lives. So that's why it's important because it affects everything. Is that vague? Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense because I do hear that a lot, but I've never thought about that, like, with some clients who do have really low self-esteem or low body image, like, they don't wanna go try on clothes at the store, or that act really overwhelms them, or they don't want to I mean, sometimes I get clients that don't even wanna be social anymore because they don't wanna be taken like, they don't wanna be in pictures, or they don't wanna date because 'cause they're so afraid of what they, feel like, so I feel like that's kind of what I'm understanding is what you're saying, right?
It affects, like, when I say, like, interpersonal relationships, all of it, right? Like,
Mhm.
from dating to social relationships, like, everything interpersonally that you can think of. When we have low self-esteem, low confidence, low body image, or negative body image, it's going to affect all of those things and lead to isolation, and then we sort of just get stuck, because we don't know what to do. Like, you sort of feel helpless, and I can imagine maybe you have clients that come to you who are like, "I don't know what else to do,"
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and it's crazy that it's not like a if this person weighs this much, I see it more than these people. Like, it seems like it's not specific to the amount of weight that they are.
Yeah, yeah, it's not it's all about perception of self, right? And
Mhm.
so oftentimes we think about body image, it's like, oh, it's like aesthetics, it's like my
Mhm.
hair, it's like this. But like what body image truly is like your perception of yourself, and how deeply that impacts just, I mean, everything.
Can you explain, like, what does low body image look like? Just, like, maybe somebody doesn't realize they even have it. Like, can you describe what that would look like or sound like?
What it typically will look like is like isolation, or like it can negatively impact interpersonal relationships,
Mhm.
your work life. And oftentimes, what I find with people is that they really just engage in like this like negative, like catastrophic style of thinking about all things.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, what we see, or what I've seen, is that like it's almost sort of like activates this like fight or flight response, where it's like their body is sort of like stressed like all the time. Like, and oftentimes what that when people think about fight or flight, they think like something really scary has happened and I like have to either run for my life or I have to freeze here. But like oftentimes what that looks like with low self-esteem is like withdrawal, right? So
Mm.
social isolation. I'm not going on a date, like I'm not taking pictures, I'm not going to like my best friend's birthday party, I'm not going to like this work event, or lashing out. So it could be like I see either or withdrawal, or like just being really negative and like mean,
Mm.
and not being your best self. And we all like, I think it's our right to just be to be the best version of ourselves, but that's typically what it can look like. So I oftentimes think too that like negative self-esteem ties into like our worst core fears. And I think as humans, like we're not meant to be alone, right? We're
Mhm.
not, like when you think about like a long time ago, like
Yeah,
back
like
in
caveman days.
right, like caveman days, like we weren't meant to be alone. We had a village, and so negative self-esteem, negative body image, we sort of turn inward or lash
Mhm.
out. Ultimately, that sort of leads to isolation, and so that's what I have seen it to look like. I mean, there are several other ways it could look like too, but
Okay.
that's how it presents. Yeah.
And then on the opposite end, then, like, what does or you I guess we should say instead, like, middle of the road self-esteem look like? Like, what should we be aiming before? What's on the other end?
Oh my gosh, yes, middle. That's where I strive. I mean, we all deserve to be there. I wish we could all be there right now. But so basically, it means like that you have this level of awareness of like who you are, what you bring to the world, how lucky the world is to have you, how lucky that your friends are to have you, without being like you feel good, right?
Mhm.
Without while also having the level of awareness that we're constantly working to feel good, whether that is like moving our bodies or fueling our bodies with food that makes us feel good.
Mhm.
Um, we have positive and healthy relationships. We can look in the mirror and say like, "Oh my gosh, like, my body's so strong. It woke me up today. I look good." Like, and not just from like an aesthetic perspective, but like I look good and I feel good, right?
Yeah.
Like I love being me. And I feel like I don't know if you've heard Snoop Dogg has like a kids affirmations album.
No way.
Oh my gosh, everyone needs to listen to that song. What it's called, "Affirmations" by Doggyland. It's exactly what this podcast is about today, like, just
Okay.
feeling really right, feeling good about yourself while also recognizing that what we call flaws, or what we consider our flaws to be, are often our strong suits in a way, right? Like, our deficits can present as strong suits, and we oftentimes don't see that. Like, we oftentimes think like, "Oh, I'm forgetful." Okay, cool. You're forgetful, but you know what? That means you're really present. Like you're
Oh.
present in the moment, right? Like a deficit can be something positive too. But I think where I would hope for people to be is just this place where it's like, you know what? It feels good to be me. Maybe not every single day, but like I know that I bring purpose. I know that I'm capable. I know that I'm strong. And I know that I'm actively working to where I want to be, not where I think everyone else wants me to be.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's a good way to describe it, and that's something I didn't realize about myself. I think that's why I was, like, in a really low place, well, not, like, a super low place, but I just felt, like, out of it when I kind of moved to Texas because I like, going to Meredith, we both went to the same undergrad, like, everybody wants to be friends, everybody's so friendly, And, like, for me, it wasn't body image, but I think I didn't realize, like, how weird it would feel to, like, have to start all the way over. Like, of course, I was like, "I got this, like, I'll, be able to make friends, I'm a friendly person," but it really tested so much of my self-esteem because the whole time I was thinking like, "Oh, do they like me? Of course they don't like me, like, I said this one thing wrong," and then it made me, like, in a spiral to feel
Yeah.
like and so then when I went to therapy, like, I was like, "Wow, I didn't realize, like, how low my self-esteem was that, like, I thought I was, like, super confident," and then, like, kinda working on, like, being like, there's other things that I like besides just being social, like, I do like working on business, sometimes I like just being creative and looking at things, and, like, throughout therapy, I was like, I'm actually becoming a lot more confident, and I didn't realize that was an issue, and I feel like that's kinda what you're describing too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and I will add, Isla, it can feel really hard to make friends, like, in your late 20s and 30s. It's a lot different than it was in college, like,
Yeah.
it is. I can't imagine having to just uproot and, like, move to a brand new place, like, kudos to you.
Thanks, thanks. Well, I feel like you really sold us because that sounds like the perfect life of like or a really great life of feeling good about yourself and like accepting everything about yourself and not having it really bog you down. So can you tell us some tips on like what you can do to improve your body image or self-confidence? Like, can you give me your top 5? Let's start with the
I
first one.
I'm a little biased, but I will often encourage people to go to therapy. Sometimes,
Yeah.
like, we can't do this, on our own. Like, I'm sure we can absolutely do some work on our own, but when it comes to awareness and really, identifying, like, maladaptive or unhealthy thoughts or, like, the origin of where, like, all of this might come from, we need someone who's trained, to help us explore, to help us process, to help us just be and to welcome us as we are. In therapy, like, we'll learn self compassion, which some of us are horrible at, self acceptance. And I think most importantly, I think learning, like, the origin, right? Like, what is the story that you've been told about yourself, like your
Mhm,
body, your self esteem, and what is the story? Like, what do you want your story to be? Right.
mhm,
So I think that's therapy for that. And then I think, also just I encourage people to be gentle with themselves and their bodies, especially during the pregnancy and postpartum period. And so many women struggle during this time.
mhm.
Uh, I think another thing is just to go outside. Being outside, like, so beneficial. Get some sun, people. Like, it's good for us. Like, go outside, and I don't mean like go outside and like run a half marathon. I mean just like go outside, like walk around, like just be outside. And then I think one thing I said mentioned earlier was like really analyzing how our weaknesses might connect to our strengths. So the really poor example I used was like, I'm forgetful, but that means I'm present. Like
Yeah.
I'm like here. And a lot of us struggle with being present. So I often encourage people just limit screen time.
Mm.
Or if you can't do that, or if that feels, or if you're someone who like your job is to be on social media, to limit the accounts that you follow that don't make you feel great about yourself. Because oftentimes like we're literally just like slapped in the face all of these like negative expectations, like things that really distort like our perception of self, like in social media, on TV, people that we hang around, things that we hear from our own families. And so I think those would be my 5 things, if they're 5, in terms of like social media. It can sometimes completely obliterate like our self confidence and self esteem.
Why is
Yeah.
that? Because I mean, it's true, like, never really feel good coming off of social media, but it seems like you get,
Right.
like, sucked in, but I don't exactly know why. Because I don't feel like it should be, like, a harmful place. I don't know why.
I think like when I think about it, I think about how it always feels like the
Yeah.
grass is greener on the other side, and social media exposes us to every like all the other grasses that we don't have, right? It
Yeah.
often causes us to neglect like our own grass, right? And the grass is often greener where we water it, not truly on
Mhm.
the other side. And I think on social media, we're exposed to things like to people who are like to unrealistic beauty standards, essentially, or or body image standards, or like even like success standards, right? Like
Mhm.
I think we just don't realize that as humans, like it's in our nature to keep up, right? Like survive or we die essentially. But so I think it really also comes down to like our biology and our need to like often keep up. Like we're
Oh.
a species of survival. So
Mhm.
in terms of like aesthetics and like beauty and stuff like that, it's just unrealistic. Like we're all going to age, our bodies are going to change. So I think to answer your question, I think it's because we're just exposed to what we
So
think
much. Oh.
right so much. But
And why
and
isn't that the same if you just, like, go? Because I never understand why isn't the same feeling as if you were just, like, to go have coffee with 3 friends? Because sometimes I'm like, either way, it's the same, right? But is it you think, like, the sheer volume of what you're getting exposed to on social media?
girlfriend, yes, if you're sipping on a chai latte with 3 friends, are you also looking at, like, I don't know, however many people you see, like, per scroll, like
Right, yeah.
right? And, like, the cutest, like, I don't know, like, new outfit or boots or, like,
Yeah, and the
then you go
edited pictures.
right. No, we're not. Like, when please go out with friends. Please have the coffee. That's so much better for us, for our mental health, than it is to be exposed, to have all these things
Mhm,
sort of telling us, like, "Oh, this is what you need to look like,
right.
or what you need to buy. This is what you need to wear." When you think about, like, infants and, like, toddlers, like, when their bodies change and grow, like, we're not like, "Oh my gosh," like, "Here, have an almond," or "Chew it well," or whatever it is Judy said. We're like, "Oh my gosh, yay, your body's growing, your body's changing." We're teaching them about their bodies, and, we don't do that for ourselves. Once we get to, like, college, it's like,
That's
"Oh, no,
true.
like, you have to look this way." It's like, "Honey, like, no, our bodies are meant to grow, and it's a good thing that
Mhm.
we're growing and changing." Like, um we are born with like our own individual set of genetics that really determine that. And people forget that. So I think like having self compassion and just that awareness of like, oh my gosh, all these things society and social media tells us or tell us aren't necessarily the absolute truth.
Yeah, no, Courtney and I, Courtney is a dietitian on our team, and we did a podcast episode recently that I encourage everybody to talk about that kind of reminds me of this, where we kind of talked about all the benefits of having fat on your body because there is benefits like cushions you from falls. It gives off estrogen that can help your bones be stronger. It helps your bones be stronger because there's weight on them. Like there are reasons to kind of have it on there. And the more I learn about bodies and remind myself about like why we have certain things that other people like, don't like the weird trend now where people are, like, taking out their, like, cheek fat and stuff. It's like, okay, but that is there for a reason, and let's appreciate why it's there as opposed to just getting sucked into what social media is saying, which is, like, all interesting.
Like, oh my gosh, like my body is beautiful for the things
Yeah.
that it does for me, and I can help fuel it. And like in fueling it, in moving it, like that then will really truly like help our self-esteem like increase and yeah, and be where it needs to be. But I think limiting social media if we can, being outside, going to therapy, practicing self-compassion, and being gentle with our bodies. Those are all helpful tools.
Well, if somebody is listening to this episode and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I need some help with this because I didn't even realize it was a problem and I need to start this therapy journey," where can they go to find a therapist that's gonna work best with them?
Yeah. So definitely don't go to like a life coach because they are not often unless they're like certified. There's been this trend on social media with like life coaches who say they're like trained mental health clinicians or psychologists or psychotherapists, and they're not. So be
What?
careful. Yeah. So life coach does not equate to like a mental health clinician or a psychotherapist, but I would definitely say Psychology Today is a really great place. You can narrow it down by like preference. And like insurance, which is important. Oftentimes, let's see what else. Community groups. So like if you're on Facebook, I don't know if many people are on Facebook anymore, but there are different community groups where like therapists and clinicians come together and you can find them that way. Also asking your primary care provider. And Therapy Den is another place. Postpartum Support International to my mamas out there who want a clinician that's trained in perinatal mental health. I am there and I can help connect you. We also have lots of free groups for women and birthing people and parents, and also Therapy Den. I don't know if I said that. I think I did, but ultimately we could always reach out to our insurance companies and
Mm.
they can help refer us to someone who's in network.
And then what if somebody is, because I've had this question quite a bit. Somebody, if like we as a dietitian are kind of like realizing that like maybe something behind the scenes is going on, like not that they have an eating disorder, but like we notice that they have a weird thought process around food that they're not able to get over, like with us, like what kind of provider should they be looking for? Like, would anybody be able to handle that? Do they go to a eating disorder therapist? Like, what does that look like?
I would definitely recommend going to someone who is a certified eating disorder specialist. So they'll have like a CED after their name, but is also like a licensed trained clinician.
Mm,
So I would look for that, or someone who is well versed in eating disorders or disordered eating.
Okay.
So oftentimes clinicians will have that in their bios, and we can find it that way too. And on Psychology Today, you can sort of like select what presenting issues you have or what you want to talk about in therapy, and it can help narrow down your search.
Okay, that's really helpful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jylen. I think this was really interesting and helpful even for myself.
Yay! Oh, I'm so glad. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to the Millennial Nutritionist Podcast. For daily weight loss tips and nutrition information, you can find us on Instagram at the.millennial.nutritionist and on TikTok at millennial.nutritionist. If you find this information helpful, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend who needs encouragement on their health journey. See you in the next episode.